Okay, welcome to lesson number 5 of playing bass and reading sheet music with me, Kyle, the bassist for Derek and the Demons. Today we're going to go over the song Late in the Fall, which is a fairly popular and kind of a rhythmically jazzy piece, I guess, which is why I thought it'd be fun to go through it. The rhythms are a little more complicated than what we're used to or what we've done in the past. I think last time we did cover 16th notes, and there are a few of those. But instead of them being directly on the beat or relatively easy to count, sometimes I just throw one or two of them randomly, it seems, in the middle of a measure, which won't actually always play on the beat. And sometimes I hit notes a little before the beat, just to give it a little tension, give it that jazzy feel. And I don't know. I think it can kind of throw some people off, so I thought it'd be a good challenge rhythmically. And then to go over some things we haven't seen before. There's some triplets in here. I even have quadruplets, which I think are easier than triplets in a 4/4 measure, which is what this piece is in. And it actually can be written out straight like this. This measure and this measure are actually rhythmically the same. They're just two different ways of writing it. But I'll cover that more when I get to it. Let's start at the beginning here, where we always do. Starting over here, we have the bass clef, and we have the key signature. We have two sharps, F sharp and C sharp, which would put us in the key of D major. It would also be the key of B minor, but in this piece, I feel like it's more of a D major. The verses start on D. The last note we end on is a D. The choruses could maybe be kind of a B minor thing. We do start on B here for these choruses, but we also kind of end up on a E. We have a lot of E's in here. So I don't know. I think D major is probably the best bet for this song. Again, we have a 4/4 measure, 4 beats in the measure, quarter notes getting the beat, 4/4 time signature. The tempo, 115 beats per minute. Yeah, seems to be it for the basics here. So let's just get started. We have this 2-measure intro piece, which is kind of a variation of what I'm doing in the chorus here. This is the chorus right here. Just a simpler version, and we're all kind of playing that together, and you'll hear that in the song. But yeah, let's just go through this. So first 2 measures, fairly straightforward. The only thing that's weird is I come in a little bit before the beat on this note here to kind of emphasize that. But counting this, 1 and rest on 2, quarter note 3, rest on 4, but come in on the and of the 4th beat and carry that over to the 1st beat of the 2nd measure, then come back in on and 2 and 3 and 4, and then we're on 1 here. So that's fairly easy. But going through the verse here, it does get a little bit more complicated. And to count this, I'm actually going to do a screenshot here so you can watch me write all over this of how it is to count. Okay, get my pen here. Is this working? Okay, nope. Wake up. Okay, got the pen. All right, so we have 1, and this carries out for most of the measure, and then we come back in on and Remember 16th notes we count as 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a full 4/4 measure of 16th notes would sound like that. So we start on 1. This is tied. It's a half note tied to a dotted quarter note, so that takes up 3.5 beats essentially, and then we have half a beat here split between these two notes, which would be and. So 1, holding it all the way through the 4th beat, the beginning of the 4th beat, and then articulating and then back to 1 here again. So we have 1, this quarter note here, 2, we have a dotted 8th note, so that takes up the space of 3/16 notes. So this next note is articulated on and then this next note is articulated on E, because this 8th note is taking up 3, and then the E of this 3rd beat here, or this note is on the E of the 3rd beat in this measure, and then we just have and, for, and. So 1, holding it, and 1, 2, E and, for, and then we're back to 1 here. And this rhythm kind of just repeats what we're doing here. So I'm going to go back to here and play through these measures here just so you can hear the rhythm and hear what that's supposed to sound like. I have the repeats off, so this is just blowing through all the repeats. I'm going to turn the metronome on here just so you can hear it even better with the beat. So the metronome keeps track of the beat. And I'm going to play it again with the metronome so you can kind of hear where these notes are falling within the beat. Oops, let me start there. Okay, so that's the verse. Pretty straightforward. I don't think it's too bad. This rhythm just kind of repeats itself, even though we're playing different notes here, different pitches. The rhythm is basically the same. Coming into the chorus here, it gets a little bit more complicated because I'm playing the same bass notes as this intro, but I'm filling in these rests with a lot more rhythm here to give it kind of that jazzy feeling. So let's count this out here. So we have 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 and. So this measure 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 and this is holding over to the first beat of the second measure. Again, this is that same kind of playing ahead of the beat to give it that tension that I do in the beginning here. And then we pick it back up on and of the first beat. So and 2 and 3 E E and. So this is where it gets a little complicated. And 2 and 3 E and E and. Does that make sense? So 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 E and E and. I didn't count that quite in the same rhythm, but I'll go back to this and play it in time with the metronome, and you can hear how that sounds. So again, and this second part here, of course, is just we're hitting and here it carries into the 1. So and 2 and 3 and 4 and just straight eighth notes here, nothing fancy, and then repeats. So again, going back to here, I'll let it play all the way through so you get this other ending here that's just all eighth notes. So it's not too bad, I think. That's essentially all of the strange rhythms. So yes, it is a little strange, but it repeats itself. So once you get those two, the verse and the chorus down, the rest is fairly easy. And then towards the end, I kind of make it less and less busy. The song kind of calms down. The tempo doesn't change. It just it feels like it slows down musically, maybe. It just becomes less busy. So let's skip ahead here to those parts, and then I can show you how I do these triplets and quadruplets. Let's do the quadruplets first. I'll start here. That's like the beginning of this phrase. So you can hear this part in time. So let's let me screenshot this so I can write on it. Is that coming up? Maybe I need to close this. Let's try this again. Here we go. Okay, so over here we have a bunch of dotted eighth notes, which take up the space of 3/16 notes. So this would be 1E and, this would be 2E, this would be and, 3, and then this is E and 4 and. Does that make sense? So 1 and E, 4 and. And that is just one way of counting this. When I write it as a quadruplet here, I tend to count it differently, and I do this with triplets, and I'll get to that in a second. But when I see something like this, it's supposed to be out of the time signature. A quadruplet kind of fits in with a 4/4 measure, which is why you can write it both this way and this way. But to count this as a quadruplet, I just say, instead of 1 and E, I just say quadruplet. I do syllables for each note. I don't know if that's necessarily correct, but quadruplet, and then 4 and. Quadruplet, 4 and then back to 1. So let me go back here and play this. I'll play it here and play through that, and then I'll play it here and let it play through that, just so you can hear. It's the exact same rhythm, it's just written in two different ways. And add the metronome on just so you can hear how it falls in the beat. And then just to nail that point home, I'll let it go through the quadruplet here. You hear that? Okay, so let's do the triplets here, which are a little bit more difficult to count. And there's really only one way to write it, and that's as a triplet. You can't sub in notes that actually fit in the time signature for this. So there's 3 quarter notes here, but they take up the space of just 2 beats. So we have 1 here, and then starting on 2, we have a triplet that takes up 2 beats, and then we have 4 and back to 1. So to count this, we have 1, we have 4 and here, back to 1, and then for the triplet, I say triplet. That looks like an and, but that's supposed to be a T. 1, triplet, 4 and. Back to 1. Same thing over here, except we have 3 triplets, but some of them are quarter note triplets and some of them are eighth note triplets. So these quarter note triplets take up 2 beats, and each of these eighth note triplets take up 1 beat. So we have triplet, and I say the exact same thing even though they're eighth notes. I just say it faster. I don't know if there's maybe a better way to do that, but that's just what I do in my head. Triplet, 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 1. So let's go back to the piece here and play it, and you can hear what it sounds like in time. I'm going to start a little bit before that so you get a feel for the rhythm. And I have that metronome on so you can hear how it falls in the beat. And hopefully you get an idea. So we're going to hit this triplet, I'm going to let it play, hit this quarter note triplet, and then you're going to hear these eighth note triplets back to 1 here. Alright, so here we go. You hear that? It does not fall necessarily in the time signature. And like the equivalent of the, I guess, tonal, how am I going to say this? Triplets are kind of like the accidentals of key signatures, but for rhythm. Does that make sense? So, you know, in the lesson before, and I think the lesson before that, we had accidentals that fell outside of the key signature. So they raised a note even though that wasn't specified in the key signature. So they raised, or they would lower a note if they were flat, if they were outside the key signature, and kind of build this harmonic bridge between 2 different notes. Triplets are like that, but for rhythm. So they're not in the time signature necessarily. They act out of that, and so you're kind of doing almost like a 3/4 measure feel within a 4/4 measure. And I don't know, I don't think we've done any 3/4 or like 6/8 measures yet. Maybe I'll have to do that for next time. I'll have to find one. But they kind of have like a swing feel to them, or like a waltz instead of a straight 4/4 or 2/4. So what we're doing is we're exiting that straight 4/4 time signature, briefly entering this kind of waltzy 3/4 time signature just for these 3 notes, and then coming back into the regular 4/4 time signature that we have written. Just like an accidental, you're playing, or just like a key signature, you're playing all these as sharps throughout the piece, but then you have an accidental in them, so you exit that kind of key signature, play the accidental, and then fall back into the key signature for the rest of the piece. Does that make sense? Okay. So I think that's it. I think we covered all the difficult parts about this piece. So I'm going to grab my bass and I will show you how to play it. Okay, so I have my bass here, and we're just quickly going to go through some of these riffs, and then we're going to put it all together with a practice session with drums and guitar and vocals and all that, like we usually do. Those first two measures, we're starting on the B there. And then we're on that third measure there, on that D. Remember, this is D major. And then that rhythm, pretty easy. So that's the verse. Okay, so the chorus part here is basically the same as the intro, but I'm throwing in, I guess, little bass fills, if those are a thing, bass fills, where I normally rest in that intro, those rest notes. I'm just kind of jazzing it up a little bit. But the bass notes are essentially the same, the B, A, G. I'm just throwing in just, I don't know, random notes there, here and there, those little 16th notes. So yeah, that's pretty much the entire song. You know, later on we have those little triplet notes, the quadruplet notes, but those are easier to play in time when you have like either a metronome or how I'm about to do it with a full band practice. So why don't I load that up and I'll play the whole song and you can just see how it's done and play along at home. Okay, so I've got my bass here. Everything's all set up and good to go, I think. So just gonna play along to this practice session. I will upload it and then you can play along at home if you'd like. And yeah, have fun with it.
It's okay, hey, no, this always happens late in the fall. It's a natural reaction to a natural reaction. It affects us all. So slow down, watch it all turn around, fall to the ground. Feel the sound, it's all around. Sleep like a hound. As the seasons change, we can't stay the same. Even if we try, when the rain's so cold, you wish that it would snow. It's time to Don't you go on icy road. It's time to be home, yeah. Strange, hey, I know it's strange, all this growing old, yeah.
So that's pretty much it. Fairly easy. I will get that uploaded, and hopefully you can have some fun with it.